Hello and welcome to another episode for MC Airsoft. My name is Mark and today we're going to be talking about optics for Airsoft. Now, first and foremost, why do you need optics? Well, truthfully you don't, right? You don't need any kind of sights on your Airsoft gun because honestly you can watch the BBs most of the time if you're not playing at night. Now, the problem with that is where does that first shot go? Or if you lose track, where is it going? If you're not using white BBs that stand out pretty well in the sun, where are they going? It's harder to track. So that's where optics might come into play. So yeah, you don't really need optics or sights for Airsoft, but it helps. So yeah. First thing we're going to talk about is iron sights. Now, they come in two different versions generally, and that's fixed and flip up. These ones came with the with this rifle. They're nothing special. They are a variation on the Magpul flip up sights, but it's pretty simple as most flip up sights are. You'll either have a notch in the back or a hole in the back, and then you'll have some kind of post on the front. And then when you're going to aim, you'll line up that notch with that post. And hopefully if you've sighted it in correctly, which if you're running any kind of sights on any Airsoft gun, you should do your best to sight them in. Unfortunately, again, I live in a wind tunnel, so it's a little bit difficult up here. I just get in ballpark, and hopefully if I go somewhere where there isn't a wind tunnel effect going on, then I do my best to sight them in time that I have. The downside to flip up or fixed sight iron sights is that you have to line them up, right? You have to get them in line, you have to get your proper cheek weld, your proper placement, and you have to get them lined up the same way every time, or else that's going to throw off your shots, right? Some sights are better about that than others, and most of the time with Airsoft you're going to want to shoot on your open setting on your rear sight. If you have a nighttime and a daytime setting, you're going to want to shoot on your nighttime, because honestly Airsoft guns aren't accurate enough for nighttime, so that's something to keep in mind. Now, like I said, make sure you sight them in, and all that. Now, realistically, you can get by with just your front sight on there. It's fine. It's fine for real steel, fine for Airsoft to some degree on both, right? So, downsides to it, they're slow. You have to come up, find your alignment, find your place on the stock, line up front one, line up the second one, take a shot. Now, of course, that's provided you actually are using your sights, but you know, that's up to you. Now, the benefit to them is that, especially with these fold down ones, I can go through with my red dot, I can do what I need to do. If my battery dies, if the lens gets shot out, if I drop it and it cracks it or throws off the zero, whatever the case is, I can either leave it on there, flip up my sights, and then rock through, rock the sights through the red dot sight, or if it's spider webbed inside there, I can, with an Allen key on this one, rip off the red dot and finish out the game or finish out the day with just the irons, and it's fine. Of course, that puts you at a disadvantage, but you know, it's better than no sights, because you're going to get that first shot on target. Another benefit is that most of the time when you buy an Airsoft gun, the sights are included. Most of the time when you buy a real gun, the sights are included. So you don't have to run out and buy an optic. So that's another big benefit to iron sights. Um, and they're just very durable. They're not likely to break. There's not much that can break on these, and what can break on these, honestly, if I wanted to replace them, I'd be out about $15, and who cares, right? So, compared to the price of a red dot or something like that. Don't have to worry about batteries, don't have to worry about any of that. If I need sights and don't have the red dot, I can pop them up and I can start shooting with the sights. So, yeah, those are some pros and cons of iron sights. Next is going to be red dot. Now, this is a T1 replica kind of thing. It's got some minor differences, but it's in that same ballpark. I'll be doing a review on that at a later time once I get some more time with it. But basically, you got red and green, and you got some other colors in there, but red, green are the main two that you're going to see. If you're buying red dot, make sure that it has adjustments on there so you can actually zero it to your rifle. And then make sure your dial, you can adjust the power on it. This one, get it close to the camera, has 5 settings for red, 5 settings for green, and 2 off positions marked R and green, G. So as you're cycling through, you can turn it on and off, right? So benefits to red dots is they're quick, right? They're quick because all you need to do is put it roughly in the right spot, put the dot on the target, and you can start shooting. Another big benefit to these is you can track your BB flight, right? So as I'm going through, if there's wind, if I'm slightly off side to side, if there's variation in, maybe I bought worse BBs than I normally buy, not the super high-end ones, and they're kind of flying all over the place. I can see that and I can adjust for that because I've got a decent size sight, and I've got 2 pieces of glass with a low red dot looking through. Now, if you wanted more visibility, you can go with an EOTech or an EOTech replica. That's another great option. With a lot of AR sights nowadays, you would need a riser in order to get it to co-witness properly, or witness in the lower third, which is preferable. These ones with this height riser, these are actually about the same size as my Magpul flip-up polymer sights that I have for real steel. And so with this height riser, I'm witnessing straight through the dot, which is how I prefer if I have flip-ups. But that's mostly because I know I don't have to actually get my sights up and use them for airsoft. I can run without sights for the most part. But making sure you have a good zero on it. I zero basically across my garage, which is about 75 feet or so, somewhere in that nature, diagonally. So standing in one corner, shooting at a box on the other, that's a fine zero for me. It gets me enough in the ballpark. For real steel, there's all sorts of discussions on different zeros and stuff, and I'm not going to get into that because it really doesn't matter for airsoft. So yeah, that's red dots. They're real fast. They're fairly inexpensive compared to some of the other optics on the market, and so they're a pretty good option, what most players are probably going to go with. What I would recommend with red dots though is get something with a dot. Don't get the big crosshairs, don't get the donut of death from the EOTechs. Get something that gives you a dot, that way you can watch your BBs as well. If you have too much clutter inside the reticle or as a reticle, you can't see your BBs going down range. So if you're like at the end of your range, or maybe it's windy that day, if you put a big old crosshair reticle or donut to death reticle over someone, you might not be able to see it. So go with something simple. Next thing is going to be something I don't have, but I have used in the past, which is a low power fixed magnification. What that's going to be like is like your EOTechs, or not EOTechs, sorry, ACOGs. It's going to be things of that nature. It's a 1:4 kind of zoom, and it's going to be a fixed magnification. You can't adjust the magnification. You're pretty much just stuck with it, and you use it in kind of an in-between between a red dot and a traditional scope, right? You have your traditional scope crosshairs and stuff like that inside, but you can also kind of use it like a red dot. They're a great option. They're a little bit dated, but they're a great option. So then you go on to high-powered fixed. Well, there aren't many of those on the market anymore. You generally find them in like the BB gun section of a big box retailer, pellet gun section, something you put on a 22. They're going to be really cheap. They're going to be probably that 6 to 9 range power. They're really cheaply made. They don't look very good. What I would recommend using those for is if you get one cheap and can't afford good binoculars. Really, to me, that's where they're useful. Just take the scope rings off of it, throw it in a pocket, throw it in a pouch, use it for target identification at longer ranges. Then you have low power variable. Now they're fairly popular in the real steel community nowadays. They're catching on in Airsoft, especially with those people going to mil sims and things like that who want to look, operator and all that. One option for them, you can get the LPVOs. I think Elcan makes theirs. A few other real steel companies, Vortex obviously makes theirs. All great options if you want to go down that road. Another option, I would consider these low power variable. These are made by Lancer Tactical right now. You used to get them from UTG. There's a bunch of different brands out there. They're your basic airsoft scope. This one happens to be a 3 to 9. I would like personally, if I was running one on a carbine length rifle, I would try and get something closer to like 1 to 1.5 to 8-ish, 6-ish, somewhere in that range. The nice part about these is if I zoom all the way out to like 3 in this case, they have little markings on them so you can track. See if I can get that on camera. Yeah. So you can track what zoom you're on, so that's great. Reason I like these is because I can zoom all the way out. I can see a big chunk of the field. I can use it to survey. I'm not going to get tunnel vision as fast, and if I'm zoomed all the way out, I can still get up close to something, and I'm not going to have to find my reticle, right? So if I'm shooting maybe the 20 feet across the garage here, I can get in and pick out a spot. If I'm shooting, to the other side of my property, which is about 150 feet or so, something like that, maybe further, I don't know. I still have enough range on 3 magnification. But then I can play on 4, I can play on whatever number I want, and then for 9, I can use it for target identification. I can get much closer to the target, which, especially if you're playing longer range games, or if you're playing mil sims, if you're playing things like that, if you're playing games where the teams are not clearly marked by like green and tan, then it's helpful to make those target identifications. Now, it also that can go in conjunction with a good comm setup, so you can be watching someone at 9 power or whatever you're on, and comms over to someone HQ, rest of your team, whoever that is, and you can report on things. You can give clear identification on targets. You can help them map movements. You can do things like that. And then you can crank it all the way back down to 3 and still be able to kind of operate with it in close range. Now, again, I did have flip-up iron sights on that rifle in case the scope goes down, which it's a $30 scope, so I'm not expecting it to last very long. Probably be reviewing it at some point, but we'll see if it lasts that long. So the next one is going to be high power variable. Now, what's the difference between high power and low power variable optics? It's the range of magnification that it covers. For me personally, I will consider anything that deals into 1 to 8 range primarily or entirely as a low power variable optic, and for me personally, I will consider anything that starts at about 6 and goes up to 32 or something like that as high power variable optic. Now, they can get real pricey. They're not really used in airsoft. Again, where they're going to take place is either where they're going to really find a niche is target identification and things like that. They're not really useful for airsoft. You're not going to be threading the needle at 400, 500 yards. So it's not really that useful for airsoft. But it is a great option if you're planning on doing a recce loadout or something like that. Getting something that has about 24 times zoom, something like that, and that way you can really look out and see things. Now, an option to replace that is you can run your low power variable optic on your rifle and carry a spotting scope. You can carry binoculars. You can carry things like that. Obviously, you would have to be at a fairly big field to really utilize it, but it can be helpful. But yeah, that would be my suggestion, is carrying a set of binos, a spotter scope, something like that instead. That way you can pack it up nice and tight in a case of some kind, throw it on your back, and it's not going to get shot out. Because once you get into that kind of range, you're either not really getting quality glass, quality scopes, or you're going to be spending a lot of money for airsoft. And maybe it gets shot out, right? Especially if you then have to take it into CQB, or even if someone just sneaks up to you and shoots it out, or maybe you trip and fall on it, break it. To me, it's not really that worth it. Something to keep in mind with that is first plane focus versus second plane focus, and that's whether or not your magnification is before or after the crosshairs, and that's really going to depend on what you want. I get the two mixed up, so I'm not going to go into too much detail on it, but that is something to keep in mind. One will allow you to keep the same crosshairs and just zoom in on the target. The other will keep the crosshairs in perspective with the target. So it's up to you as to what you want to do with that. For airsoft, I highly recommend sticking with red dots or low power variables. They're going to be your cheapest option. They're going to be your easiest to replace options if they break, and they're going to be the best suited for airsoft, in my opinion. So with that being said, until next time, stay safe and stay hydrated.